truly the end is close. It's just like a jigsaw puzzle, to use another illustration. When you have all the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle and you start to put them all together, eventually when all the pieces are in place, the picture is clear, isn't it? And that's exactly how we should feel about the prophecy that Jesus gave.
Another flawed analogy. You do not complete a jigsaw just by taking a jigsaw box, opening it, and spilling out the pieces and saying, there, look, I've got all the pieces. These are all the pieces. Therefore, I have the picture. You have to assemble the pieces in a very specific order, just as with the password analogy that he used earlier. The letters that you use need to be sequential. They need to be in a specific sequence to unlock the computer. So his analogy is flawed. It's not simply a case of, do we have all these things going on at the same time? Great, this is the last days. The analogy he's referring to refers to a specific pattern or sequential order. Therefore, the analogy is flawed.
Soon, very soon, he is going to step in and take action. But of course, sometimes we may feel, yes, we've known about this for quite some time. And it means that we've had to wait a long time. But that doesn't negate the fact that the evidence of the last days is here. Perhaps we could illustrate it this way. Most of us have gone to an airport to meet someone who's coming maybe from overseas or another part of the country. Now, since 9/11, it's very hard to go to an airport and actually stand on the side of the runway and see the plane land. Usually what happens, once you get to the airport, you're allowed to go into a large room with other people, and all you see are monitors on the wall. Now, what may the monitors say? Well, you see it says there, the flight has left. Then later, maybe the monitor says the flight is on time. Then it says the flight has landed. Then it says the flight is taxiing. Then it says at the gate. Well, now you're starting to get really excited, aren't you? And yet you haven't seen the plane and you haven't seen your friend yet. But you can see from the indications of what you're seeing on the monitor that it must be close. And then all of a sudden the doors open, people start to come out. Well, now you're really excited because you know, yes, you're going to meet your friend. Well, that is similar to how we can view the last days. There's been a lot of things happening that we don't actually see, but we see the indications of what's happened. And we know that very soon, Jesus, the angels, and the 144,000 will take steps to remove this old world and then take further steps toward the restoration of peace. Isn't that a beautiful promise?
The slaughter of billions for not being Jehovah's Witnesses. No, I don't view that as a beautiful promise. I view that as grotesque doomsday ideology. But what we have here, yet again, he just keeps spitting them out. Apparently, he's very proud of these incredibly dodgy and silly analogies. I feel like I'm actually dropping IQ points as he's talking because the analogies have so many holes in them. But let's just take that one about the airport. And Geoffrey, if you're watching, I'm going to fix it for you. So imagine you turn up at an airport to pick up your friend and you go into the arrivals and you look at the monitor and it says flight on time. So you're really pleased. You're going to be seeing your friend soon. And then half an hour passes and the flight says on time. And you're thinking, okay, he should have been here by now, or she. Why aren't they here? Is there a problem? Anyway, I'll stick it out. I'll maybe go and get a macchiato. And I'll sit at the coffee shop with the monitor in view so that I can be ready to spring up when my friend arrives. 2 hours go by. The screen still says on time. And it's starting to get quite inconvenient. You're starting to have to ring back home and explain that there's a problem and your friend is really, really late, but you insist on being there to meet them. A day goes by. Now you're missing work. Now you're in trouble with your boss. Your family back home are confused as to why you're still at the airport instead of coming home and maybe monitoring on the internet whether the flight has landed or not. But you insist on staying at the airport. Weeks go by. You're living at the airport now. It's a bit like Tom Hanks in The Terminal. You figured out how to survive by taking coins out of abandoned luggage trolleys and just eking out an existence. You found maybe a cleaning cupboard that you can use as a rudimentary shelter, and you've befriended one of the airport cleaners on whom you have a bit of a crush, who is helping you eke out an existence. Months go by. By this point, you and the cleaner are living together in the cleaning cupboard, and periodically you'll emerge from the cleaning cupboard looking very dishevelled, with a full-on beard, and you'll check to see that the monitor still says flight on time. 2 years go by. By this point, you're like Tom Hanks in Castaway. Your clothes are hanging off you in shreds because you haven't been able to change them in so long. You're basically surviving off scraps that you foraged from bins and from plates that have been discarded in the canteen. Obviously, by this point, your family has disowned you and reported you missing, but for some reason, the authorities can't find you in the airport because you're so well concealed and so well hidden, and maybe you don't want to be found, but you do still keep checking the monitor. 10 years go by. By this point, you and the cleaner have children, and you're raising your children to carry on your vigil of making sure that the friend gets collected, of making sure that they keep checking the monitor to see whether the flight has landed and whether the friend can be picked up. And you encourage your children that if they ever have children, they should continue this vigil of religiously checking the monitor and seeing whether the on time changes to landed. 140 years go by. You have long since died. Your children have long since died. And now your grandchildren and great-grandchildren are still checking the monitor, which still, after 140 years, still says on time. That would be a more accurate analogy. That's how long this group has been proclaiming the end. And if you don't believe me, maybe you're a Jehovah's Witness watching who thinks, well, that's a bit unfair. We weren't saying that at the beginning. Here's the front page of the very first watchtower, Zion's Watchtower and Herald of Christ's Presence, published July 1879. Let's read the first few words. Prospectus. This is the first number of the first volume of Zion's Watchtower, and it may not be amiss to state the object of its publication. That we are living in the last days, the day of the Lord, the end of the gospel age, and consequently in the dawn of the new age, are facts not only discernible by the close student of the word led by the Spirit, but the outward signs recognizable by the world bear the same testimony, and we are desirous that the household of faith be fully awake to the fact that we are dwelling in a grand and awful time, in an age on ages telling, to be living is sublime. Those were literally the first words of the first watchtower printed in 1879. Nobody, Geoffrey Jackson, waits for a plane to land for 140 years. That's how long it would take for your analogy to be remotely applicable.